We just tried to clean their stuff up. They're all our contract.
My daughter has Midwest region this Father's Day weekend, and if they win,
I gotta figure some of this out.
Great.
My kids are
Indiana.
I need to be.
Hasn't Patrick?
Well, and I.
Copy of what they were.
Yeah, so just if they win, then I have to. Yeah, 20 seconds when I leave.
Absolutely.
Stuff that I don't know much about.
I get it.
Stop turning my microphone.
You guys don't have any requested changes? I don't assume you guys have any requested changes, do
Golly, man, this tail's gonna blow up. 6 is not gonna be. This tail is gonna go
It's
up.
gonna be loud.
Brian's bill alone is gonna
Although I will say, I have
carry half the
friends,
taxes.
I have friends in Olathe that they always come down
Oh,
here.
it's legendary.
They can't have them.
No, it's legendary.
Don't be here for the 4th if you don't like fireworks.
Yeah, dog will go, he will hate you.
We have a neighbor who every year he puts out a sign that says like, a vet lives here, please be courteous of noises, and I'm like, good luck, buddy.
Not in one
Good
little
luck, buddy.
So big, man.
Yeah,
This one day,
sorry, you're gonna have to get a hotel.
Not like
my kids.
the year.
All right, guys, it is 7 o'clock. I want to welcome you all to the regular scheduled city council meeting for June 9th, 2022. And we do not have a pastor today, so Mr. Van Houten, would you please do the invocation for us? If you can stand if you're able.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight and just ask for your blessing over our meeting, and just ask for your fairness and discernment, and just pray for the safety of everyone here. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you would please take the roll.
Mrs. Roth?
Here.
Mr. Peel?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mrs. North? Here. Mr. Van Houten?
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum present.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any requested changes by staff or council? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and Madam Clerk, I believe we need to take a roll call on that one. Oh, sorry.
it's on this
No, not on that one. It's on the next one. Got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation on the Cyrus Waste Management Project, and we have Commissioner Tyler Vaughn with Dave Delp and Paul Owings.
Thank you, Mayor and respected council. Appreciate you guys' time today to present to you an extremely important project near and dear to my heart, and I believe near and dear to the folks of Spring Hill, along with neighboring communities in Cyrus and everybody in between. So I would like to give you a brief summary of this road that I've traveled along over the last 4 years of what is the Cyrus wastewater system, or what it is not. What it is not is working, okay? What it is in need of help. So 4 years ago, I inherited this whenever I took on the commission in District 4. 20 years before that, a sand filter system was put in that was not viable for longer than 20 years. And at this point, KDHE has decided that they are gonna basically phase those systems out. So 4 years ago, we started working on a project to say, what are our options in Cyrus for the folks who use this sewer system? Basically, the options came down to there weren't any good options. It involves land acquisition. It involves projects that cost about $5 million to satisfy 80 homes for sewer. Not feasible. So we started looking outside of the box. What were some opportunities that we could possibly have? And we like local partnerships. So of all the projects I've ever entertained as a commissioner, this project feels like the most advantageous for residents, for county and city partnerships, and ability to use funding that we have from the feds and the state to reduce any taxpayer exposure. So the overall goal that I have as a commissioner inside of this district is to look to how do we plan for the future? How do we build infrastructure that plans for the future? And how do we not break our constituents? I think we all try to look for those opportunities. This is the only project that I've ever seen that I feel like we can actually build for the future. We can partner together as government entities. We know you're growing. We want you to grow in Miami County. We want to grow in Miami County. We can solve a problem for the folks of Cyrus, but further, we can develop infrastructure that's going to support growth on the Miami County side in several different ways in that corridor. And we have projects along through there. So that's the high level commission speak of this. I want you to feel comfortable that this is not just an idea shot in the dark. 3.5 years ago, Paul Owens and I sat at that Cyrus wastewater system and started thinking through ideas. We've gone through engineering. We have funding opportunities that we're looking to pursue. What we're looking today is for you to hear what an engineer has said, the thought out forethought that we put into the project, and see if this is something that you would be interested in moving down the road with Miami County as a partnership in. Okay? So now I'm going to bring up somebody who actually knows what he's talking about, Paul Owens from BG Consultants. And I actually have Dave Delp here too, the Director of Code Services. So Dave, you can come up as well.
Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Paul Owens with BG Consultants. So Miami County owns the wastewater treatment collection and treatment system in the city of Bucyrus. It's Miami County Sewer District number 2. And as Tyler said, the system's failed. They've had numerous ADHE violations. They basically have a schedule of compliance to replace the facility and address it. So we've looked at numerous alternatives, including lagoons and mechanical systems, and relocating it, rehabilitating it, and another alternative that we found to be viable was to pump the wastewater from Bucyrus to Spring Hill, and then it would enter your collection system and go to your treatment plant, and you would treat that wastewater. So what does the wastewater look like? There are 77 connections in Bucyrus. 73 of those are homes. I think 3 of them are commercial, but it's just light commercial, like bathrooms and sinks, and then there's one church. So it is primarily domestic waste. They also have what's called a step system. So the sewage leaves the building and goes to a septic tank, solids settle out, and then they pump off the top clear liquid. So it's even low strength waste. We have data, and it's about half the strength in terms of BOD and TSS as opposed to normal residential waste, and it's about equal in terms of the phosphorus and nitrogen. So it wouldn't be a huge loading on your facility. I think it would be relatively small compared to Spring Hill as a whole. I have data here with the flow and the loadings, and then I think what we need to go forward, basically all these funding agencies require reports, and as a part of the report, if we're going to pursue the Spring Hill option, we would need some sort of written commitment from Spring Hill that you would be willing to accept this waste at a later date. Eventually, for an agency like USDA or CDBG or SRF to fund it, they would want some sort of legal agreement between the county and Spring Hill. That way they knew if they were funding this would be a long-term viable option and the money would be well spent. We would need some other items relating to the rate structure, connection fees, connection location. I've got it all outlined on a letter that I previously provided. So we would be building a pipeline from Bucyrus to Spring Hill, and I guess the development comes into play that we could size that so that maybe a subdivision or two could connect to it, or we could consider how that could be utilized in your development plan so it could benefit you as well. I think that's pretty well between what he said and I did summarizes it. Do you have any questions?
Did you give numbers on the current existing doors?
Doors?
Like the,
77 connections.
Yeah, 77, 3 and
And
1.
I think it's
73.
important to note that Cyrus has the capacity for double that. I believe the system was actually made for 160, 170 hookups, and they use about half of those now. So there is the opportunity, you've seen the sign over there that says we have sewer hookups, that they still have some of those lines to hook up, and they actually have tanks in each property, so it's really just taking liquid. It's not taking the solid waste. The solid waste is actually pumped. So that really limits the exposure that you have inside of your plant.
This question may be more for Pat or Jackie, but do you know what our current sewer capacity is right now? I believe we're only at like 40-something%.
Right,
now.
so we have plenty of capacity, and especially with just a liquid, we don't have to press it and things like that. Now, I would not say that we won't take those solids on a program of the pumping and maybe bringing it down to our plant and processing it. But, that would all be part of, in the agreement and all. As far as being pumped to us on a daily basis, no, we would not be taking the solids on this particular, subdivision or unincorporated area. The other thing that I think is, interesting to note, they also have another, wastewater that we're planning on looking at to make sure that we can also serve it, because it's eventually will be a failed system as well. And it's to the south, and so we're gonna try and work with them to gravity as much as we can. And also, I, of course, like to plan way out, and even if it's 10 years, maybe plan to accept that other wastewater area of the counties. So, if you have any other questions on where that's at, they can better address the something ranch.
No, that's actually Walnut Creek. That's,
Walnut
as the
Creek,
crow
is that-
flies about 3.5 miles
Okay,
south of where your water plant is. You can kind of follow it up from 68 Highway and 255th there.
255th, yeah, so thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, so I think that the idea of it more is, how do we plan for the future? How can we let Paul then go and seek these funding opportunities? And we're in a bit of a time crunch to make sure he can go and do that and pursue that for the county. It's a project that I'm gonna fight for regardless, because I think it's extremely important that we're preparing in the north half for what is coming. We know it's coming, and how are we gonna manage some of that growth? And those conversations, I know development gets scary, people get worried about what development is, but if we don't stay in front of it and control that conversation between us, these government entities that do have, we're elected to watch over these areas, right? If we don't have the voice in how they develop, it gets kind of dangerous. And this is an opportunity for us to define what that looks like.
Well, and this is kind of the first step to spur that development. You get sewer, I mean, that's the holdup of most development to begin with, is whether it has sewer or not. So you get the sewer going there, and that'll just spur development all over the place.
Yep, absolutely.
What's your timeline that you're thinking or hoping?
I think we could get rolling on it as soon as we got this information presented in this letter, so we would just probably a month after we got the information, we could set up the reports and apply for the funding. We've done a lot of the legwork already and been in the communication with the funding agencies.
Do we have any information on, like, are these gonna be 50-50 grants, or what are we looking at as far as funding? Do we know any details on that, or is it just preliminary right now?
Yeah, we really can't predict what the final grant allocation would be, but I think we were originally trying to get, so the system's not in compliance, and the system, since we're consolidating systems, we would qualify for 30% principal forgiveness with SRF, and then you can refinance that with USDA. So we could potentially get either 45 or 75% grant through USDA. So what they'll do is they'll look at how it impacts the city of Cyrus and do some underwriting and calculations, but basically we would do an SRF grant to pay for it through construction, like a construction loan on a house, and then refinance it with USDA to get the grant. I've successfully done that. I've gotten principal forgiveness, CDBG grant, and USDA grant all bundled into one project. and it really can cut it down to a minimal amount. I'm doing a project for a water plant in Highland, Kansas right now, and that was the circumstance. So that's kind of the approach we're taking.
And one thing to be clear of, we're not asking for any funding right now. What we're asking for you for the go-ahead is that you'll accept the waste into the water plant. And that these flow rates and things are something that he can kick off and start going down the path so we can see what that looks like. We were actually prepared, was it last year? We were close, but we pulled it waiting as COVID and everything was happening. We pulled it so that we could actually have a more formalized conversation and work through this. So again, this isn't something that we just came up with last week. We've been working on it for 3.5 years, and with your acceptance saying, yes, we can take that waste in, we can at least move forward with the engineering, work through the grants, and then come back and we talk about that partnership.
And from my understanding, at 77 homes, or even if it's 150 homes, that's essentially not really gonna impact our sewer service
That won't.
really at all.
Right, and
Or obviously it'll impact a little bit, but not a noticeable difference.
no, yes, you're correct. And I would think that maybe it'd be worded that we're willing to accept the waste from their system. And then, there's still a lot of things to just be worked out that I feel very confident that we can work out with them. Tyler was correct that also with the changing of the guard, everyone kind of stepped back. So the couple of things tonight is that, get acceptance, staff and the county get acceptance that we're willing to take their waste. And then also that direct city staff to work with them to get these, any of the numbers, anything that they need to pursue forward with this funding opportunities. And possibly engineering. How far along are we on engineering?
We haven't just started the design. We're
Okay.
still trying to procure the funding, so
Okay.
that would be the next step. I guess if we can get this data pulled together and the fees and any connection costs, then we can just update our report.
And then
We have the report done, we just need to update it and resubmit it.
And I think we've all seen the growth on the Johnson County side, and I think this will be a big step to, start that growth on the Miami County side. So I think that'll be great for the community and just great for Spring Hill as a whole.
How far is it? Like miles?
Miles?
Right at 6.
About 6.
And so the benefit to Spring Hill is the infrastructure portion to be able to tap into it, basically.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I won't use the term growth areas because that's sensitive, but I would say typically we would look at a partnership as Pat's talking about in that 6 miles. The county has a lot of interest to say, we want growth to happen in the cities, and then it starts phasing out. And again, back to the point of, we have the responsibility to decide what that growth looks like. So that's what some of those conversations would be between us, the county, and you, the city, of, is it 3 miles out and you're planning for that growth out? And then how is the county planning to grow? Is there commercial? Is it whatever it is, we're deciding how that partnership looks, and whether it's the 3 miles coming out that you get off to Renner or Lackman, and then we look there for the county off to Cyrus, and that comes into all of those partnerships and how we look for that development to work.
I know you're not asking for any funding today, but so what potential funding would you need from us outside of just processing the waste?
So I think that really just comes from once he's able to see what he can secure from grants. There's also, as we all know, we all have some checks sitting out there from the government that we can allocate to projects that aren't tax-based. So those are opportunities too that we'll be looking at from the county. We would encourage you guys to look at too for certain projects. You're gonna be evaluating those for a whole bunch of projects. There's ways for this to happen. I think our preliminary cost was,
2.5 million.
2.5 for the whole thing, but that
Yeah,
was
it's not a
year and
lot of
half,
money.
2 years ago. So who knows?
Yeah, and I don't think that we're looking at a ton of money after we go through the forgiveness,
Yep.
principal forgiveness and things like that. So there'd be a lot more numbers thrown at you.
I'll say at this point, we're just saying, yeah, we're willing to
That's
accept the
correct. Yeah.
waste. We're not agreeing to do anything.
You're not
not
agreeing
agreeing
with
to pay anything.
anything other than saying we can move forward to pursue some of the grants. we'll come back before you, once the project's defined, and say, this is what it looks like. Now let's start talking about how we make this happen.
Right, so if I could get a letter from the city of Spring Hill just detailing these items, then I could just put that in the appendix of the report. And then that would trigger this funding procurement, and then we'll know what the funding will be. It's not something we can really predict ahead of time, you know, we have seen it be successful. It seems like the type of project they would fund, because rates will be relatively high, but I think that is what we need to go forward with this whole option.
Any other
You
questions?
guys think?
Okay, we really appreciate you guys' time. Thank you for coming up today.
And I guess we would need to come up with
Consensus,
some type of
right.
consensus. I don't think we need to vote on it, but some type of consensus. I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be great
I'm on
to spur
board.
development.
Yeah, if we can partner and, you know, both parties, get benefit, then yeah, that's.
I'm on
Yeah,
board.
I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the citizen participation period. And if you could just, when you step up to the microphone, just state your name and your address, that would be great. The first person we have on the list is Dan, and I believe it's Shelley Broyles, maybe? I thought I'd have my own turn.
Hi, I'm Dan Broyles. Live at 21127 West 186 Terrace here in Spring Hill. Good to meet you, Mayor and City Council. This is our first meeting here to do this.
Welcome.
My wife, Shelley. I guess you know we're here because we're a bit concerned about the $34,000 we're being required or requested or proposed to pay for the improvements, being part of the I guess they call it a special improvement district. It was a bit unclear to us when we signed the documents for the mortgage and everything, that there was this extra fee because it's a to be determined. It wasn't set in advance yet. In good faith, we understood that probably meant something reasonable. We had no idea it was going to be $34,000, and it left me wondering, what in the world then did the builder did the developer even pay for? In fact, he's just the landowner. He didn't develop a thing. We're paying for the development of all of the sewers, whether they're sanitary or storm drains. That's coming out of my pocket, not the developer, not the builder. It's customary for the developer and the builder to work together to pay for those things and include those then in the price of the lot, which is an improved price, right? Improved lot price. And for the builder too. So, it's part of here's the amount that it's gonna cost to build your home. So it was a bit puzzling for us to see all this, and realize that we're paying for a lot of the infrastructure. I mean, it's okay, landscaping and some of the other things could be considered improvements, but storm drains and sewers, curbs and even asphalt roads, that's basic infrastructure, and it feels disingenuous that the developer has put that upon us. And I'm not sure if that was with approval of the city council that the developer was able to do that or not. I don't know the history of that.
So we have questions.
But it felt very disingenuous to us, and I know the developer isn't here to defend himself on that, but it feels like we're the developer and not him.
And there's only 15 in our neighborhood, the whole thing, that have gotten these letters. So why are we so special?
Pardon me, and I just wanted to make a point, and this is the citizen participation portion of the city council hearing, the city council meeting, but immediately following this on the agenda is a public hearing tonight on the special benefit district, at which time you're entitled to make comments regarding the special benefit district, and you can do that then. So I defer to the mayor if we want to address those then or both times, but I certainly want to give these fine folks the opportunity. They can if you wish both times. You absolutely can. I want to make sure that you know that, so that you have the opportunity.
Oh, thank
to
you.
make
you'll
sure
be
that
on
those
record.
comments, because
Be on
what's on the public, that puts it on the record, the public hearing, which we must maintain for the public hearing. And I did not want your comments to be missed. That's all.
Okay.
That's great, fine. Can we
We-
get something, some answers on why we are being asked to do this?
And if
Everyone
not, and
we've
if not
talked to-
answers, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Everyone that we have talked to have said, I've never heard of a city doing this, ever. So it's making us go, what's going on? So we're
So-
just hoping to get some answers.
We'd like
you
to
know, to our
convey to the city
questions.
council that, if this comes up again, that it is very uncustomary. It's not, there's no reason that the developer and the builders can't cover that.
We paid a lot of money
Yeah,
for a very
for an
small lot.
improved lot, and the price we paid was what we would have expected in the current market. We expected that to be developed, or at least infrastructure included. So yeah,
So if
we
you
wanted to
could
make that,
please
make sure you understood that.
make sure that we understand why
Hopefully we
we're
don't
being asked to
see
do
this
this. And we
happen
don't want
further.
to be speaking out of turn or anything,
Hmm.
but we have the right to know why we're being asked to do this when the developer really should be handling this. And I know that the developer and that the builder, they work together, to take care of these types of things. And we even paid an extra
Thank you.
for infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. All right, next we have Dave Delp on the list, but he was also the person for the presentation, so I think maybe he just put his name on this list. So unless he has anything more, but I don't think he does. So the next person after that would be Bill Peterman.
Even though I was here, I'm so quiet. How do I, show these on the screen? Is that good?
Thank you.
See if it works this time. No.
The other way.
Go the other way, it's upside down.
Oh, okay. Yep,
Projectors at school.
there we go.
You got it?
Yep, thank you. Bill Peterman, 19431 West 200th Street. I want you guys to take a look at these wonderful yard art places. The city has the right to give these guys permission. What do they get, a permit? They get a right-of-way permit to bury cable. That's been in that guy's yard for 8.5 months. Almost like a chicken coop, isn't it? Looks that bad. Now, they did fix this one in this guy's yard, but that don't look like anything like the rest of the yard, does it? We need to have stricter restrictions on these guys getting permits. We need to make sure if they're not gonna do the job, because they're gonna come back in about, what, month, 2 months, and want more permits to do the same shit. Excuse me, but that's what it's like. I mean, it's not right. You guys have the right to stop them, to let them know that you're not doing this to our citizens. Right now, we're giving the citizens the backseat, and we're helping all the developers and all the people that, here's a stormwater drain. What's that doing? I'll tell you what it's doing. It's going all the way, there's a better one. Because that's not the color of the dirt in our pond, because it's going from the storm drain to our pond. Now, are you guys gonna help us pay to have our pond redredged when it gets full? Now, here's the last one. There's 8 houses over there getting built. Those 8 houses are being put up. One of them has a silt fence. So we're doing the right thing 12.5% of the time. Is that what we're known to do? Only do 12.5% of the right thing and 80% of the wrong thing? So I'd just like to bring that to you guys' attention. We need to do something about these, put silt fence up like they're supposed to. It's not a new rule, new code. It's the same code that we got going right now, correct? So, I'd just like to see it taken care of, or they do the right thing. The other thing is, the police department, during the summer, I was wondering if there's a possibility with all the kids shooting and stuff, is there some way that we can get, maybe during the summertime when the kids aren't there, where all the guys go through different schools and are ready for if something does come up? Right now, from my understanding, we're the closest to the schools, the Spring Hill PD, but we're secondary. Johnson County takes care of stuff. We have to wait for Johnson County to show up. We need a key. We've got the best officers in the state. They need a key. They need to get in there. If they're waiting on the sidewalk, like the 19 officers down in Texas, are they gonna wait while the kids are getting slaughtered in the school? We need a key. Spring Hill School Board needs to start working with the Spring Hill Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to present? Looks like Mr. Burton would.
No.
Okay.
Paid too much money.
If not, we'll go ahead and close the citizen participation period. And next we'll move on to the public hearing, and that's a special assessment for Dayton Creek Phase 4 Special Benefit District, and that is either Mrs. Armstrong or Mr. Ellsworth. Take your pick, or both.
Thank you. I'll make just a few comments. Do we need to officially open the hearing?
Yes. Officially open public hearing.
I'm Luann Armstrong for the citizens who are here, and this is the public hearing for Dayton Creek Phase 4.
Can you step up to the microphone a little bit more?
Special
There you
Benefit
go.
District. And Tyler Ellsworth, who is our bond counsel, is with me. The intent of our hearing is to consider and hear questions and any complaints or objections to the assessment roll prepared in conjunction with the following improvements in the city as authorized by the resolution November 2022 R08. And this is regarding the Dayton Creek Special Benefit District. The benefit district was authorized on December 12th, 2019 by the city council, and it was authorized to construct certain improvements in Dayton Creek. And the improvements are to be paid 100% by assessments to those parcels that benefited from the improvements. So I will let Tyler, if he has any additional comments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Mrs. Armstrong said, yeah, this is the public hearing to consider the levy of the assessments on this Phase 4 benefit district. And I know that Mr. and Mrs. Broyles probably have some questions about the history of the benefit district. If this is the appropriate forum, Mayor, I'm happy to try and answer.
Absolutely. Yes,
Some
please.
of those questions. So this is the 4th benefit district in the Dayton Creek subdivision. The developer of Dayton Creek came to the city several years ago and said, we'd like some assistance in putting this infrastructure in. And in putting this infrastructure in, what we as the developer, and to be clear, my role as bond counsel is to represent the city. So I'm speaking as if I'm the developer, but the developer is not my client. But the developer asked for assistance in putting this infrastructure in and assessing it back against the properties. And in doing that, he indicated that his intent was to arrive at a level of assessment per house per year that he thought the market could bear. And so that came out to, I think, probably somewhere between $2,200 a year and $2,600 a year per house. and that was how these benefit districts were structured. And so it may be that part of the confusion, and I'm happy to answer specific additional questions that Mr. and Mrs. Broyles have, but state statute requires that we provide published and mailed notice of the public hearing to all the owners in the district before we levy these assessments. And the letters went out, and the letters stated the total principal amount of the infrastructure that would be assessed against each home. And that amount is $34,000 and change. And so it can be a surprise to see that $34,000 amount when prior discussions came up about the assessments, that was discussed in terms of dollars per home per year, which might have been more in the $2,200, $2,300 range. I can't say that that's for certain what happened, but I do know that that's frequently cause for concern. And I will say that we won't know the final amount of the assessments per home per year until after we issue bonds later this summer. But I do think that given the current interest rate environment, it's likely that the assessments in this Phase 4 benefit district will be around $2,300 per home per year. So I wanted to point that out. I don't know if that answers some of the questions that the property owners have, but I thought that at least I would provide that additional information. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions from the council or from property owners.
So currently, that assessment's not included in the property tax bill that they have?
It is not currently.
Okay.
It will begin.
We're giving them the hearing to let them know this is gonna be added on to.
That's correct. It will start with the tax bills that go out this November.
Okay.
One additional item to note is that there are different methods of assessing these costs. If you don't have a benefit district, then the cost of this infrastructure really does get built into the price of the lot and the price of the home. In theory, the idea with a benefit district is you can reduce the price of the lot and the price of the home if you spread the cost of this infrastructure out over, a 15, 20-year term, 20 years in this case, and use the benefit of the city's tax exempt interest to finance this at a lower rate than you could if it were a private commercial loan or your mortgage or something like that. In this benefit district, the assessments are levied on a per lot basis, equally per lot, instead of per square footage or something like that. That was another step that the developer took to try and make sure that from his perspective, these assessments were borne equally. I mean, if somebody had a pie-shaped lot at the corner of a cul-de-sac, maybe they have 50, 75% more square feet than somebody down the street, but that doesn't mean that they have 75% more benefit from the same sewer line that went in. So that's maybe worth pointing out as well.
And I don't know if you can answer this or not, but was there something sent out to all the homeowners when they were purchasing their property saying, you are expected, a benefit district is expected to be coming in the future. We anticipate it'll be approximately so-and-so dollars. Was anything like that made known to the home buyers when they bought their house, or was this just something they're just finding out now after they've owned their house for 3 years?
That's a very good question, and I meant to touch on that earlier. So there's notice in a couple different ways. Nothing was mailed out previously. The developer has an obligation under the benefit district statutes to provide paperwork to the buyers that say, you're in a benefit district, here's our reasonable estimation of what you're going to be required to pay. And so every homeowner in the district, those here tonight, anybody that owns a home in Phase 4, the 6th plat here, should have that documentation from closing.
But it could be buried in 500 pages of.
It absolutely could be. It absolutely, and it probably is. But they're required to be provided that by the developer. And if they weren't provided that, then that conversation is between the developer's team and those individual homeowners. It's also reflected in title, in a title search of the property. The resolution that establishes the benefit district gets recorded in the real property records, so it comes up for the title companies as well.
What's the, couple questions. you said 2,300 per annual is about what you're thinking it's gonna be, which, so in dollar figures, we're talking $192
Yes,
monthly,
yes,
tacked on to whatever their mortgage is already.
yes.
Okay. And then how does it get decided or determined when this goes online or goes to approval? Is it once all the lots in the district have been developed and sold, or is it a certain percentage of them, or?
It's really, the benefit district statutes say that when the cost of the project can be finally determined, that the assessments have to be levied. So this project was completed, I think, earlier this year. And so we've been getting our arms around what the final costs are and putting these assessment proceedings in place. So by statute, this would be the time to proceed with this levy.
So basically, once all the construction bills come in and they add them all up, then they'll know the total cost of.
That's correct. That's correct.
To me, that doesn't seem like a very honest way that the developer developed the land with things that were buried under a lot of written words, as we all know how wordy contracts can be. And I don't think that's very fair.
I think that's true if that was the only notice that those homeowners had. The developer represented, I think, to the city that there was much more education that they intended to do with their homeowners to say, here is the infrastructure we're putting in, here is the quality of the subdivision and the amenities, and here is what we think people are reasonably expecting to pay for that entire package. But I can't speak to what communication there was or what correspondence or documentation there was outside of what legally was required to be in their closing papers.
It seems like it maybe should have been a little bit more effort in the developer explaining that more clearly to those homeowners that built those homes there. Because of all the times that we've lived in different developments throughout our married life, I've never seen where homeowners had these special benefit districts and had to fork out so much money every year. I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it differs in different
Yeah,
jurisdictions.
it's common in kind of where I grew up, but it was the first place I had ever heard of, Dayton Creek. We had looked at a house out there, and I was lucky enough that they had already instituted the benefit district, so I had seen what the ramifications were before we moved on anything.
It's the after the fact that's really.
That's kind of the hard part. Yeah, I was lucky enough to see it beforehand. Now, I know that at least my wife was our realtor, so it's a little bit different, but that was one thing that had to be disclosed to the realtors, so I know that's something that should have been disclosed, at least if you're represented by anybody. As a caveat, I know that's something that should have probably happened.
Right.
When there's a benefit district, so it's on them also, whoever's representing you.
Right.
So it sounds like they most likely fulfilled their legal obligation to notify, but it would have been nice for them to go above and beyond and make sure the homeowners knew what was happening, so they knew what they were gonna encounter versus just being possibly buried in a bunch of paperwork that they might not have even seen.
I think that's true, and I think it's helpful to keep in mind that, the developer isn't here, so they can't speak, and they're not being given an opportunity really to speak to the efforts that their team, intended to undertake to inform people.
Yeah, and once again, we don't know,
Right.
we're not, so we're just
Right.
going off of what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Do we want to give opportunity for
Any other questions?
folks to? Yeah, I was gonna say, we need to.
If there's anyone in the audience that would like to step up to the microphone and ask questions of the bond council or about this, feel free to step up and.
You guys remember me, I'm the one that was asking about no more benefit districts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So,
This didn't.
all I wanna bring up, my son bought a house here in Spring Hill before I did, in Maple Ridge. Now, the only thing that the realtor did wrong was where it said any extras, they put a 0. But when he went to sign all the papers, at the last sign, or at the signing before they got the house, they had whited out the zero and put in the benefit district, because Maple Ridge was a benefit district also. That's why I hate benefit districts, because young kids coming out don't know. Right now, you're saying the average is $2,300 extra a year, right? That's $55,200 extra on a lot. Now, I know when he opened that up, he was getting $35,000 a lot. And it's higher than that, because I know a couple people that just moved in there, and they're only $1 million homes in some of the places. Benefits, people buying $1 million home need a little extra, but it's not gonna be extra. What does it cost a foot for a street in Spring Hill?
Approximately $350 a lineal foot.
So if he wants to be a developer, let him be a developer. That's why I complain to my developer all the time. Be a developer, develop the land, develop the properties so people want to buy. Don't just kind of hide behind little things. I'll quit at that.
Thank you. I do apologize. We did have Dan and Shelley Broyles were first on the list for the bench, so if you guys want to come on up, and then anyone else after them that would like to.
Nope, that's fine.
I skipped over them.
Thanks for listening to us again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
For-
of course.
It does seem dishonest, and it does seem disingenuous to have the city council send us a letter saying you're gonna be assessed, when nobody else said anything. However, it is in the contract,
But it
but
was
we,
TBD. It said
Yes.
TBD on the amount.
We expected
And in good
good
faith, we
faith.
expected that that would be a reasonable amount. I didn't realize the developer wasn't going to be a developer. When we paid in excess of 50,000 and some maybe excess of $60,000 per lot, just the lot. That for only 9,000 square feet, maybe 10,000 square feet, that seems like the fully developed price to me. So whether the builder is just pocketing the extra, I don't know. It doesn't appear, when I look at the list of things that we're paying for, and as you said, it's 100% is paid for by this benefit district. There's nothing left to develop. I'll just buy a large piece of land and let whoever wants to build a house there pay for everything, and I'll just charge them the upgraded price for the lot. I just.
it feels like.
If there can be something to done in the future to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or it doesn't become common, or if it is, that it's much more well-known and understood, and the costs in advance, instead of just a TBD on the statement when we signed it on closing day. So, we didn't hear from developer, the builder, or from
We
our,
received nothing.
or even our.
And there was no estimate given at all,
Well, they mentioned what the previous, two of the previous tracks, I think, went, or plats were for, but it gave an annual amount, but it was also uncertain. It sounded like that was just the cost of the property tax on an annual base, or something like that. It wasn't very clear.
Yeah.
And especially when you're going through all the signing and everything, had this been something we were familiar with what it meant up front, that would have made more sense when we came to that statement.
And did your realtor give any inclination that there might possibly be?
No, not to my knowledge, recollection.
Not to my knowledge.
No.
Not that I
Yeah, I would think in the
And we really do
contract
know our
stage,
realtor,
there should be,
I'm sorry.
at least when I was in the contract stage over there was more up front. I would be concerned if there's not at least more of and you can speak to this more about what they have to do, but I would think we need to have some sort of disclosure of the previous plots, like you said, what they were on the contract
It would be nice
portion.
to know, like the total amounts, and, too. It didn't specify the total amount, it just, so had I known that it was gonna be in excess of $34,000, I might have talked to the developer about that.
Yeah.
Something.
And I know some of that's unknown, like they said, until we get all the construction costs, but I agree that
But at
I would
phase
think
4,
they
we
would,
have-
should be able to give some type of estimate to at least, you wouldn't hold them to it, but at least get it
My
in the
understanding of
ballpark.
improvements doesn't include all the infrastructure, it is I completely expect to have sewers and drains and things like that as part of the development in a new construction. I don't expect to be paying for that in addition to the lot price, an improved lot price and building price. So in a way, it was it felt very, very disingenuous, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of us here when we say that.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, our address is 21127 West 186th Terrace,
Right behind Dayton Creek.
right by
Elementary.
the elementary school.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Is there anyone else that would like to step up and speak? Come on forward. And once again, if you could just state your name and your address when you get up there, that'd be great.
While he's coming up, I wanted to ask Pat. I don't know if you remember. I don't think it was this council. I think it was last year. Didn't we? Wasn't a request made for another one, and it was decided we were not going to move forward.
The previous governing body, there was another one.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that last year. So we voted
Yes.
no to not
That is correct.
give another benefit district.
Yes.
So I thought that was important, especially folks that live there. You were asking about
Right.
what can we do to not have this happen in the future? It was already voted against last year.
Correct. And just so you know, after everything, I'm making a list and I'll go through, because I know this governing body was not a part of it.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Waterman, and my address is 21110 West 186th Terrace, just down the street from the previous citizens. So my wife and I also have the same, concerns that they stated about this kind of special assessment just being presented in this letter. Like them, I also noticed the document in the paperwork, but it was very unclear what that was. I mean, there was that amount, but it wasn't at all. It was very easy to kind of overlook and get lost in what you're doing. And I know that this is a legal process, and you're supposed to review and critique and analyze and ask questions when you don't understand, but there's a lot of things that go into buying a home when you're doing it for, well, in my case, hopefully only once. So anyway, that being said, I do have a couple questions just regarding the letter that was provided by the city of Spring Hill. And I guess the first thing is, it references a resolution number 2019-R-26. I haven't been able to find that resolution, and I'm sure that I can obtain it. But one concern would be is if we're talking about this $2,300 odd amount annually, how long does this go for? How many? Well, I guess it just goes until the $34,000 is paid, or is it what's the end date?
And that's something Tyler could probably speak to that on.
Okay. I'm happy to speak to that. And I guess the other question then, the follow on would be, can there then be another assessment levied in 5 years? Oh, we're gonna add another one for something. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how long this can go.
I think that would only be possible if a new benefit district were approved. Is that correct?
Okay, that's what you were talking about.
That's the only way that situation could happen. We'll have to have Tyler answer your other question.
Okay.
Right.
Those are good questions, because it's concerning when you get something like that. So those are good questions.
Absolutely. No, this benefit district will run for a 20-year term. And part of later on the agenda tonight is a resolution authorizing the sale of bonds, which are to finance both your roundabout project and also the Dayton Creek assessments. So the Dayton Creek piece will be a 20-year bond issue. And so that $2,300 a year per home is debt service on those bonds, principal and interest for that 20 years. And Mr. Peel is correct. You would not see some sort of second surprise assessment at the end of the term or during the 20-year term without a benefit district being created for that assessment to pop up. So this benefit district was created by a developer who owned all the property at the time, bringing a petition to the city council saying, I own all this property, it's 2019, I'd like you to create this benefit district. You would not be surprised by some new assessment in the future because you would need to be aware of that.
And once again, this was created 3 years ago, right?
Correct, it was late 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the if you divvy up the 34,000 number by 240, which is 20 years of monthly payments, it's about $142. So with the interest, that's probably where the 190-ish number comes from.
Right.
Running the quick math and
right. Yeah.
All right, well, that helps explain it for me, so
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And again, my understanding, the whole reason of this is to make the price of the home lower, right? They're supposed to be lower to basically
At the
make
time
up
of
for it.
purchase.
Yeah.
The lot purchase is where this is
I think it's a lower interest rate, right?
problematic.
Well, no, I'm talking about the price of the actual purchase,
Right, that's right.
Yeah, those houses are supposed to be less than what like the comparable house in another neighborhood would be that doesn't have a benefit district, cause
Right.
that parcel or that lot would be considerably more usually in a different neighborhood is how they're supposed to work out.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
That's the theory, yeah. And you do take advantage of the city's low borrowing cost at a tax exempt interest rate and spread that over 20 years.
Yeah.
And there's several layers in place to try to make sure that the property purchaser is informed about this through either the paperwork stack that we were talking about or the realtor or, somewhere in there that, hey, by the way, this is gonna come somewhere down the road to you and it's gonna be an additional cost for the home you're purchasing because this benefit district is set up and it sounds like that system has really failed some of our citizens, which I think really sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
I think the developer purposely knew that if he really tried to explain it well, people would not want to agree with that. And I don't understand why at a public hearing, the developer wouldn't have to be here to answer some of those questions. And I could probably guarantee everybody on this council would have never okayed a benefit district like that. So I'm glad none of us did that. But it seems like he should have to answer for what he did and not being very open and disclosing it so it could be easily read, because there's a lot of surveys that are done out there that people can get the outcome that they want without really the people voting on something knowing what's going on in a survey, because I've seen that in school districts done when I've attended.
Sure.
So to me, that was pretty purposeful. And he did sell a lot of lots, but most people are not thinking they're gonna have $34,000 to pay off in 20 years. So I don't know on a public hearing what can be done about that.
He had notice of the public hearing just as everyone else did. So I can't speak for him, but I take your point.
Mr. Ellsworth, I have a question. We're, obviously, it sounds like between a rock and a hard place. We feel for the citizens here who, feel like maybe they were misled. Although the city, I don't know what the city, what are our options as far as, what can we do? We have to.
I don't know that we can.
Right. I feel for them and it sounds like the process failed, like as some of these folks have said.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what are the choices? What are the options here?
Right. So for context, and you're exactly right, it is putting the city between a rock and a hard place because part of the benefit district process is issuing temporary notes during the construction, and those notes are coming due here in the fall. And so the city has to issue bonds in order to have funds to pay off those notes so that it pays its obligations.
We took on a bill and now we're trying to collect, and
That's exactly right. That's exactly
we can't eat this bill.
No, I mean, the difficulty is to the extent that there were failures of communication in the process, those failures are difficult to iron out at this point because
Because it was approved 3 years ago.
it was, that's right, it was approved 3 years ago.
Well, it sounds like the city did its job of communicating. We've sent out the notices. Now, we can't tell the developer, we can tell them, but you can lead a horse to water, but
No, that's right, and that's exactly where I was headed, is there is very clear language in the benefit district statutes stating that a reasonable estimate has to be provided. And that really is the homeowner's recourse here. And that, the city is a party to these proceedings because it's the city's debt. The city is the mechanism, the entity that is levying these assessments. But to the extent there was a failure of communication that relates to that statutory requirement, the recourse there is the individual homeowners talking with their own realtors, talking with the developer and the developer's realtors, and who all is in that private transaction really can speak to and has knowledge of what communication did or did not take place.
so we're not attorneys here, but if they were to find that they did not get proper documentation, then they could pursue that avenue should they feel need be with their.
And they would pursue that with the developer, not with the city, essentially.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Can you speak to what the actual requirements are as far as the disclose, like you said, that there's a reasonable amount that should be disclosed, right? Is that at what points, like at contract time, or is it at closing table, is it, I know you said 3 times, but.
Yeah, I don't know where in the process that has to be without looking at it. I think it's during the sale, during the sale of the property when the sale occurs, but I can't tell you whether that's at the closing table or, 90 days ahead. I don't think that the statute is that specific.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the statutory language does require a reasonable estimate of what the specials will be. I can't tell you how that's been interpreted.
Okay. I think we had a question back there.
And I can answer part of that. The only mention of the special assessment was at contract signing. We signed our contract on January 29th of this year, or not this year, of last year. And that's where that piece of documentation was.
And did they give you an estimate at that time?
Again, there was that number, 2,300, but.
Oh, they did have the number there.
But it was not.
It was
not
it almost looked like it was
clear
the
as to
total
what
amount.
that was, and we didn't have the contract ahead of time.
Yeah.
That was another thing I kicked myself on.
Yeah.
Of the process.
Okay.
Of not asking for that contract a week in advance to actually comb through it, really understand every single piece that was in there. It was, Lisa Ratter, calling and saying, we'll, come over this time, we'll sign the contract. Here it is. You have, 15 minutes to review it and sign it. So that was, I think that, shame on me for not understanding the homeownership process a little better, even though I've never done it before. So the other thing I wanted to thank Amy for getting a copy to me of the resolution, 2019-R-26. If this had been part of the contract, that would have helped me immensely, because this is very clear that there is a substantial amount. It's also, how many pages long? 7 pages long, and it has Exhibit B here that lists all the lots that are to be assessed.
Mm-hmm.
This would have caused me to, ask some additional questions before signing.
But and that came out, that was done 13 months before you bought your home.
Yeah, so it would have been nice for them to include that.
To include it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's all I have. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Pat, from a city standpoint, is there anything we can do in the future? Obviously, we can't retrograde back, but is there anything we can do in the future to try
Sure.
to prevent this from happening
You bet.
again 6 months, a year, 2 years?
Exactly what we should have done is the truth of the matter is the prior staff should not have dragged their feet. These benefit districts need to be taken care of immediately, because once before that person builds their home on there or goes to buy, and we already have a benefit district in place, it's there. Now, we can almost guarantee that everyone at closing signed with the title company on the benefit district. But in retrospect, if we would have had this in place and the first houses came up, it wouldn't have been 3 years before, oh my goodness, all of a sudden my payment's gonna increase $200. And that's why there really wasn't a lot of, well, there was no public comment on all the prior benefit districts, is that they were completed and already on the tax rolls before people bought their homes. So yes, that's really about the only avenue. I mean, we're talking about 3 years. I think there's 2/3 already full. Houses, homeowners.
In 4.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're talking about a lot of homes already occupied that if they
Just
would have
finding
got
out
their,
now.
right, if they'd have
They're all gonna
received
get
their
hit
first
after
tax bill and it was on there, you know, they would have, everything would have figured, and I do, you can ask staff, this won't happen again. We have to be timely on this.
I mean,
So-
I think our best recourse is understanding the negative outcomes of what a benefit district can produce in this situation, and being mindful of that, of if we're gonna consider them in the future. And,
Okay.
knowing, as he's talking about, if all the cost is in the upfront and you're paying for it initially from the very first time you pay all along, it's not that as big a deal. But getting hit with it after the fact is just awful.
Well, and also a benefit district like this, like I said, theoretically, it's supposed to make the price cheaper.
Well,
That nowadays, they don't really seem that way. It's hard to really
Yeah.
figure that out, right? So it's tough.
but also,
Yeah, it's hard.
also to speak a little bit for the previous governing body, they were using this as a tool to get park trails in, some special amenities and all there. And then also the crossing that floodplain was very expensive. And so that was a tool that not only helped the developer in this case, but also helped the school district be able to put a school over there. So yes, when it started out, it was gonna be used as a tool to keep lot costs down and do it that way. Then as it progressed along, they used it for park trails and, because the public can walk that area. I'm sorry, park trails and then bridges and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And I do want to be careful, and this is not me defending the developer at all. I do want to be careful, since the developer is not here, throwing them under the bus too much, because I don't know what was provided, what wasn't provided. All I can go off of, obviously, is what you guys are saying was provided and what wasn't. So I don't want to speak for the developer, without them being here. But it sounds like we can do a better job.
It seems too like that it was kind of left to the realtor, that the developer left it to the realtor, and of course they want to make sales. So I don't understand why the realtor didn't explain the benefit district.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. She's, or someone spoke of one of the developers that is for the development. If you had your own developer, shame on your own developer, or your own real estate agent, shame on your own real estate agent as well.
Yeah.
Because they're obligated to say something. And a lot of times just at title work, you sign that and it says up there, 2,300 and I can see where a lot of people might think, well, 2,300 over 10 years or 20 years or something, it's nothing, but it's per year, so.
Yeah, and it would be very easy to think that that's just a one-time payment, especially, all of us that have bought a house. I mean, you're signing, 100 pages. So
50 or
you're not,
60 signatures.
you're not, I mean, you spend a few hours there, but you're not reading through every single sheet in extreme detail.
At this time, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment or have any more questions?
If not, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Thank you, guys. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
And this is the one that I do believe, Madam Clerk, we need to take a roll call on. Right? Yes, because of some items that somebody, she needs to abstain from some items.
That's the next
Is it formal?
Number 12.
My bad. Sorry, I was told it was this one.
I told you
My bad.
wrong.
You're good. All right, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
You got
I stated.
a
Got a motion
motion and a
second.
second already.
Is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. Next, we will move on to formal council action. And the first item on the agenda is consider the approval of appropriation order number 2022-0609. And there is no presentation for that, and that one will be a roll call. And it's under my impression that it's just general items, pretty straightforward. Is there any questions any of the staff or council has on any of the items on that?
No.
No, it looked pretty straightforward.
Yep, I've read through it pretty detailed. It's pretty straightforward from what I could see.
Move to approve the appropriation order number 2022-06-09.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll now?
Mr. Peel,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mrs. North,
Aye.
Mr. Van Houten,
Aye.
Mrs. Roth,
Yes, with the exception exception that I abstain from any invoices pertaining to J&T Auto Service.
motion passes 5-0-0 with the abstention for Mrs. Roth on the JT invoices. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consider ordinance number 2022-16, an ordinance levying and assessing special assessments to pay for improvements related to Dayton Creek Phase 4 Special Benefit District Plat 6. And Ms. Armstrong or Mr. Ellsworth, if any of you guys have anything further on that.
Thank you. Yes, this item is to consider and authorize ordinance 2022-16, an ordinance levying and assessing special assessments to pay for improvements related to Dayton Creek Phase 4 Special Benefit District Plat 6. This geographic area is the 6th plat of Dayton Creek. That plat does include the school, however, the school is not, and it is excluded from the benefit district. So these are just the residential parcels. The process that we've gone through is, we did have the resolution directing the public hearing. Each parcel owner was notified of the public hearing and was provided a statement of the cost proposed to be assessed. A notice of the public hearing was published in the Miami County Republic. And at the public hearing, the homeowners of the property owners had the opportunity to ask questions. The next step would be the approval of the ordinance, which levies the assessments against those properties. The owners will again be notified by mail of the opportunity to prepay in full without interest. Any amounts not prepaid will be financed with general obligation bonds and paid through the annual installments by the owners of each property. And the assessments will appear on the November 2022 Johnson County tax statements. Do you have anything to add to that?
I don't, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions if there are.
I was gonna say, yeah, what's the bond rate right now?
Do you have Ben's pre-sale?
I do not.
Or do you have an estimate?
Yeah, I think in the current rate environment, these will be tax exempt bonds, so there's a slightly lower rate than a taxable bond issue. But I think given where rates are currently, it's probably, it's likely that we'll end up somewhere between 3% and 4%. I don't know exactly where in that range, but probably 3 or 4%.
So it's still a little bit lower than current mortgage rates.
It should be, yes.
What's the number of properties?
64.
64?
Yes.
And do we know a breakdown of developed versus undeveloped, occupied or not occupied?
The city clerk may have that information, and
get it
I don't
later.
wanna put her on the spot.
You don't have to tell me right now. I'll get it later.
Right.
Any other questions or discussion?
It seems like to me, since that was kind of a floodplain, that there could have been a better piece of property. I know it's already done where the school was built, but our school districts are not hurting as much as you think. And it seems like they should have had to pay a little bit into that when they developed there. Would have been a more fair thing than homeowners buying a home and having to do all the infrastructure that a developer should have done. So I think we need to be careful and make sure that the school districts do their part because they are not hurting. It's how they use their money. And when our high school was built over here off of Ridgeview, they didn't do their part of putting in the sidewalks or the curbs. And it made it not safe for kids to cross across the street to the high school. Parents in my subdivision of Wolf Creek were paying up to $500 for 2 kids to bus their kids there. Because if you've ever driven down Ridgeview, it's a thoroughfare to go from one side of town to the other where the middle schools were. And we need to hold our school districts accountable because they have the money. And I don't know if anything can still be done, that the school district, a lot of money was put in because it was a floodplain, they should have paid their part.
Right, and I can't speak to the specific agreements between the developer and the school district in this case as to why they agreed to exclude them. I do know that there was an agreement for the school district to backstop the special assessment payments in the amount of in excess of $200,000 if special assessments went delinquent. But to the extent that that was in lieu of a contribution by the school district, I couldn't say.
What's backstop?
Backstop is there was an agreement in place where if the assessments became delinquent, that the school district and the developer would collectively step in to make those payments. Right.
Temporarily.
Right. Right.
As a bridge to.
Right, as a bridge so that the city could. Right, so that the city could pay the debt service, but then potentially recoup that later.
Any other questions, discussion?
You know, I would just second Councilwoman North. I think she's right. I think the developer, school system, they need to be a little more on the hook for some of this infrastructure stuff. I mean, maybe now's not the right time or place, but maybe it is too, just to make that comment. I think some of these things, the old council, the direction they wanted to go, I don't think is represented today by many of the new council, at least. I'm on Team Wendy for that one, for sure. I think that's right. I think she's spot on. I think the infrastructure, we need to be cognizant of school systems, they got a lot of, we want to work with them, right? So it's a good point that I agree with.
And staff appreciates that direction.
Sure.
As having a directive, on how to proceed.
Any other questions, discussion, comments? If not, I entertain a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance number 2022-16, levying and assessing special assessments on certain lots, pieces, and parcels of land liable for such special assessments to pay the cost of certain improvements in the city of Spring Hill, Kansas, Dayton Creek, Phase 4 Special Benefit District.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Roth,
Yes?
Mr. Peel,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mrs. North,
No.
Mr. Van Houten.
Yes.
Ordinance passes 4-1-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consider resolution number 2022-R-11, authorizing the public sale of approximately $3,025,000 principal amount of general obligation bonds, series 2022A of the city of Spring Hill, Kansas, And Mr. Ellsworth and Miss Armstrong, you guys still have the floor.
Okay, thank you. This is our last item on, at least my last item. On October 8th, 2020, the City Council approved Resolution 2020 R20, authorizing the issuance of $3,090,000 of temporary notes. Those temporary notes finance the Dayton Creek Special Benefit District Phase 4 in the amount of $2,025,000 and the 199th Street and Ridgeview Roundabout in the amount of $1,065,000. The construction on both of those projects is complete, and this resolution authorized a bond sale for the permanent financing, and the public sale is scheduled for July 14th, 2022. Does anyone have any questions? Or, okay.
Any further questions,
No.
comments?
No.
That one's pretty
And
straightforward.
we're combining these two for one bond.
That's correct.
How does that help with the actual rates and things like that?
I don't know that it helps, but when the bond is sold, it probably helps in administrative cost to combine
Okay.
those into one sale.
In comparison to doing two of them.
The actual costs are split out for each project, so those are maintained separately.
Okay.
But we only have one set of administrative fees.
Yeah, I don't know if you could quantify it, but by combining two projects and getting a larger bond issue, you potentially attract more buyers who are interested in purchasing that bond, which in theory reduces the interest rate.
How does it work since one is kind of a capital improvement and one's through assessments? If we want to pay down the portion that's for like the roundabout later, how does that work? Because they're going to be in the same bond.
You could pay down a portion of it. Typically, bonds have at least a 7-year
Prepay it.
window that you can't prepay, and that gives the investors some protection that they're gonna get whatever rate they quote until that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th year.
Okay.
But certainly if you wanted to pay down a portion of these after that prepayment option arose, you could certainly do that at that time.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
Move to adopt resolution number 2022-R-11, authorizing the public sale of approximately $3,025,000 of general obligation bonds, Series 2022 Alpha.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consider the approval of an engineering agreement with HNTB Corporation for 223rd Street improvements, US 169 to Victory Road, and Mr. Dan Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, I come before you this evening to consider the issue of an engineering agreement with HNTB Corporation for the 223rd Street improvements from approximately US 169 to Victory Road. By way of background, a preliminary study for the 223rd Street corridor from west of 169 to east of Victory Road was performed by HNTB in 2015. The first study did provide a preferred alternative, and the first phase of the improvements were suggested to include construction east of 169 to the vicinity of Victory. The goal of the improvements is really threefold. First, to provide, relocate Webster Street from being very close to the ramp terminals at 169, to provide additional distance to those east ramp terminals. Secondly, to provide adequate access control on 223rd Street for both safety and operational enhancements. There's no medians, there's no control of left and right turns left in that vicinity. And third, to provide alternate access to 223rd Street and Victory Road for properties on the south side of 223rd Street. The roadway, which currently goes up immediately east of the south ramp terminal, is also a problem, as is Webster, so we need to have some alternate access for them to get up to 223rd Street. The engineering agreement before you this evening will continue the work previously performed by HNTB, including property and topographic surveys for design, traffic engineering to analyze the intersections for corridor intersections, and the development of 3 possible interim corridor configurations for consideration by the city, also including utility coordination and, of course, cost estimating. Once a preferred design is provided and approved by the city, final design of construction plans may commence under a supplemental agreement. We didn't include that work at this time and due to the uncertainty of the concept selection and construction timing and funding, mostly how we'll, when and how we would fund the project. On the analysis of the engineering agreement, it was negotiated by the city engineer and city attorney for the city. Terms of the agreement favorably protect the city in the opinion of the city attorney, although I shouldn't speak for him. The funding review is a little interesting. The project design will be funded by Miami County sales tax funds, that is, and we had a discussion about this, as I understand it, are currently available for use up to $1 million. These funds should cover the current preliminary design and the final design effort and probably then some portion of the construction. So there's no direct expense to the city for this engineering agreement. And the reason I say, as I understand it, is because the Miami County has been providing $1 million to the major cities of the county over the last several years for infrastructure improvements. But there's not a formal interlocal agreement for it, but we've all been told by the Miami County administrator and the director of public works that the money's actually in the bank just waiting for us, and their interest has been in telling us to get moving and do something. So my answer is always to build something. So I'm happy to have that type of instructions. So excuse me. With that, the recommendation of the staff is that the governing body approve the engineering agreement with HNTB Corporation in the amount of $133,735 for the 223rd Street improvements design. I have the engineering agreement as an attachment. It contains all of the scope and fee, and then I have with me the insurance certificates. We got those a little bit late, but the city's risk manager has approved the insurance by the engineering firm as well. It's a very exciting document if you want to in a court form. At this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
The balance, the $1 million, obviously that's nice that that's there for us to use. And I'm assuming that the balance would get used for this, down the road for this project?
I believe that's the intent, yes.
Okay. I didn't know if it was earmarked or required to be.
No, the intent under the budget, that's what staff is intended to use it for.
Okay.
And then to also just to add just a little bit, Miami County is continuing to help fund this project. And most likely next year we'll be receiving $250,000 to another $500,000. So.
Thank you for that.
What's the timeline? Like, how long do you think the study will take?
So I was kind of completion date is in here. I think this phase of the study will be done before the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, it says
primarily
5 months. That's kind of what I.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to think there's a date after the notice to proceed is issued. So
yeah.
And then, upon completion, is it like ready for the project to start considering how to fund it and be ready to start working on the project?
Well,
so
I would say we get what I would call really a set of field check plans out of it. So we're well on the way to in the final design process, and this allows us to field check it and to get accurate cost estimates, which of course is what we're after, so we can determine the funding. The third thing it allows us to do is potentially move forward with right-of-way and easement acquisition, which is going to be necessary through the final design
And that'll
process.
be a little bit of a process.
Yes.
That was probably a better answer than my question. Like, what would be our next step after this?
Yeah, next step will be approve a concept, begin right-of-way documents, determine how to fund the project. Then we do final design, acquire right-of-way, and bid the project.
And you said there was gonna be 3 potential concepts?
Yes. Up to 3. We may, during this part of the design, decide that really only 2 make sense. And there's a concept, obviously, in the preliminary study. It just hasn't been fleshed out terribly far.
And is this just for an improvement of 223rd, or are we looking to do something that kind of
Whoops.
extends down, right?
It includes relocating Webster.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm.
And then,
this
you know,
is part
some
of that.
areas of the intersections go back a little ways, particularly Webster, it goes clear up past the ponds, you know, where the ponds are on the east side of Webster probably. So we're looking at where Webster needs to come in exactly. And again, there's a concept in the preliminary study.
So that's what
And-
they're kind of gonna be doing on this, right?
I'm sorry?
That's part of this?
Yes.
Okay.
And that would essentially open that area up for more development right in there too. If that moves that over there, it would.
Well, there would be more development west of Webster between
Right.
Webster and 169.
Right, because right now it's the way it's designed.
It's up pretty close, yeah.
Too congested right there. And from my understanding in talks, that the state's kind of been on us for a while about how close Webster is to 169, right there on the highway.
That was identified, in the KX7 corridor study. It's not particularly unusual to have these situations, but as development continues, it becomes very problematic in terms of traffic and safety as a result.
Any other questions, discussions?
So at this point, budgetary wise, it's all going to the county?
It is
Or
to be
assumed.
reimbursed by the county, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Our funds won't be used.
Yeah.
If there are no further discussions or comment, I entertain a motion.
Move to approve the engineering agreement with HNTB Corporation in the amount of $133,735 for the 223rd Street improvements design.
Second.
I've got a motion in 2 seconds. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0.
Thank you.
Sir. All right, next we'll move on to announcements and reports. I don't have any further announcements other than I'm excited that the pool's open and my kids are getting ready to take advantage of that. So I think that's great. Mrs. Roth?
Yeah, I'm boring. I don't have anything to say. So thank you for the citizen participation and coming out. We appreciate hearing from you, so thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We always encourage that for sure. Mr. Van Houten?
No report.
Mr. Peel?
Just a couple things. The fireworks approvals tonight, so want to make sure we encourage our citizens to be respectful and safe with their fireworks when it comes into fireworks season, because Spring Hill is I think very well known for shooting fireworks. So that was one thing. And Pat, I was curious, do we have any more of these outstanding benefit district issues, or is this like the last one?
No, this is the last one.
Okay.
Mr. Young?
No report.
Ms. North?
I think that was a great move that we just approved that engineering agreement to move Webster over. That'll be great.
And that'll go along with the sewer and all that stuff. It'll kind of all tie in together there. So. Mr. Burton?
Thank you.
You're good.
It's from the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
So it was from the presentation of the sewer district. I think gives the flows and things like that. So, no, I'm excited. On one thing on Webster is before they really get a whole bunch of designs going in their head and all, I was gonna speak with you guys, and we've kind of drawn up some preliminary in the past and get your buy-in on it, or get your ideas on what you really would like to see there, right? So, other than that, I think the pool went real well this week. Few times it's been closed. I know there was some discussion about, I might as well just bring it up.
Yeah.
Some discussion about the tornado sirens. And just so you all know, the city is not responsible for setting off the sirens. It is a Johnson County Emergency Management operation. And we would encourage and have placed on the website, and we'll continue to, as we find out all the rest of the apps, will be placed on the website where you could download an app and you would get notification. Signs are not designed to be able to truly be heard inside. It's a notification warning if you're outside, you're at the park or something like that, and so those are really what they're designed for.
Designed to get inside and get somewhere
Right,
safe.
get to a safe place. So, and we encourage everyone to get an app on your phone. And if there's any trouble on getting apps or you need to know anything, you can sure contact us and we'd be more than happy.
And the old school way that still works is get a battery powered weather radio.
That's correct.
So that way you don't have to rely if the power does go out, you're still getting your warnings and stuff.
Yes. And there's a lot of news channels that give them away still also. So, yeah, we'll see.
About the pool, I forgot to ask. There was some, I got a complaint about the
Riverwalk.
the Riverwalk
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Do you know, can you speak to that at all?
Sure. What it was during COVID is we'd open it up and just have it open for people to walk the Riverwalk. So the new facilities director, Mark Squire, he has worked out an agreement that you can come in and walk the Riverwalk. The most important thing to them is that they don't have to wear the tube. So what they are doing now is they'll carry a weight or something to indicate that they're just walking the Riverwalk, and they will be able, I believe if they're 62 or older, can get in free. You can use your punch pass, whatever, for a Riverwalk. And, and if there is difficulty in pain or something, we'll help out.
So that's back open now, or?
It was always open.
Oh,
They just
were
wanted
saying-
it isolation.
Oh, okay.
They wanted it all like it used to be in COVID,
Yeah.
We were able to just open it up and just have
Just the
8 people walk that.
Okay.
So we did, there was negotiation and accommodation.
They're just not closing it down just for that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We just
Because
didn't
basically
feel
it was
fair.
It was closing the pool to the other, 100 people that might want to come
Right.
that day for
Okay.
a few months.
And then
want to
also-
accommodate both.
Yes, and then also they do not have to wear the raft.
Okay.
Or,
Try to come up with something that
Sure.
accommodated both sides, still
Work
allow
both
them to have their Riverwalk, but still allow the people that want to utilize the pool and come
right.
to go down.
And it's not, it's not like it was, and we wish that we could do something like we did at COVID, but, this was, unfortunately, we can't do that.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you,
That's all,
sir.
Ed. Thank you.
Mr. Dunley.
One quick thing I should tell the council, as Mr. Miller made reference to, the HN2B contract was favorable terms to the city. And I would note that we should thank or recognize HNTB for ultimately agreeing to terms that cities of Spring Hill size, and even 4 times or 5 times the size of Spring Hill, are unable to sometimes get those terms, but we requested those terms through negotiation, and HNTB ultimately agreed to terms that are normally only available to, say, Johnson County government, KCATA, City of Kansas City, Missouri, and Overland Park. And so we're grateful, and that's something that you all should be aware of. So thank you, that's it for me.
Chief Henson.
No report.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
No report.
Ms. Armstrong? Mr. Messer?
Just had a couple of things. The Veterans Park Memorial and fishing jetties is out to bid. We've got a pre-con schedule for it, so that's pretty good news. The construction's gonna start about July 18th on the turn lane, and shortly thereafter on 199th and Webster.
Great.
So, and we're gonna be working, again, we're gonna try, if the weather's gonna let us, we're gonna be working, doing some crack seal up there on 223rd next week, so it's gonna be a little bit of a mess. And that's pretty much it.
Right. how's it just, on crack seal, how's it going with crack seal and some of those other
Weather keeps
road
running us
improvements?
off. Yeah, I mean, the weather keeps running us off, but it seems like we're gonna get a break. The problem is pulling a large enough crew to have 2 flaggers and get everybody out there. It's gonna take people from the wastewater and water and everything else to get enough people to have a safe operation, but, we'll get it done. Yeah, we do have, we do have a bid on chip and seal, and we'll probably be bringing that to the next meeting.
Okay.
And we're gonna be doing 3 areas, and hopefully, we've asked them to hold a slot for us on the schedule until we get confirmation from you guys. I mean, but pretty excited about that. They were able to fit us in.
Cool.
And also, I know the manufacturing plants will be happy. We do have the Lincoln Street we're getting our 3rd bid on that, and Pat could speak to that. So we are moving forward with getting that put together, because I know that's been a sore spot
Yeah,
for
so what we'll,
Seats and some of the other companies over there to get that road fixed, because it's been in bad shape for a while.
Right, I'm sorry, I tried to interrupt you there, but, or speak over you. We do have, one last company that, we've been talking with, and they'll have their stuff in, I hope tomorrow. If not, we'll keep on them, and then we'll present it to you guys quickly and get going on that yet this year, get that completed.
And once again, for anybody that doesn't know, that's right in front of Seats and the Clorox plant, right in there.
That's
where
correct.
that road's in. If any of you have driven down there, it's in pretty rough shape down there. So something that's, I've personally spoke to some of them, and they're really wanting that fixed. So we'd like to obviously accommodate them and make that a good, safe place to drive and preserve people's cars. Yeah, it's been something that's needed for quite a few years.
Do we have any update on the Quick Trip opening?
No, not yet. I noticed that they were working on some electric stuff today, out there, so I do not have an opening.
Okay.
One thing, if you've noticed that, the city was able to get the block stained that goes around the, lift station area, and if you will take a look at it, it was just plain block. We could not get that color of block of Quick Trip, and I think they did an excellent job of matching it.
Yeah.
So, but my anticipation when talking to Jessica back, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, was the last council meeting. They had anticipated being open mid this month, so we'll see how it goes. We are getting the propane tanks and all set there as soon as some stuff gets done.
With a little bit of luck and no heavy rains tonight, you'll be seeing asphalt going down tomorrow up there, which is,
I was wondering, yeah, it looks like it's ready, so.
it's
Yeah.
ready. It's just how much rain do we get tonight, and how big of a storm, and
Yeah, it looks like they're about ready to put their big signs out by 169 and the other one, so they're got all the.
I would ask too, is there a way to crack down on what, I forgot about Mr. Peterman's pictures? I've noticed that a little bit too, where they're kind of beating up yards and stuff, so. Yeah, and I totally forgot.
Yeah, I had it in my notes, I apologize. Yes, so there's several folds in this. One, Jackie and I have spoke about it several times, and we're getting with the stormwater department to make sure that the silt fencing is up. Then we're gonna have to do a better job, actually in the building inspection department as well, to make sure that when that foundation goes in, that gets put up. The silt fence is what I was talking about. Now, as far as the right-of-way stuff, that, up in that area has been a big problem since it started. A company by the name of Lincoln, and then there was other companies, and so at the time, we did not have a true right-of-way inspector. Now Brandon is doing it, and he's really trying to stay on top of it, but a lot of those companies have closed shop.
Yeah.
So, but we do know that the mother company of it, that happens to be Suddenlink up there. Is that right, Bill?
He left.
No, we left.
It's Suddenlink up there. And so they're coming out to do some stuff to it.
Okay.
we do still have one insurance bond on it. But yes, we are cracking down on what is done in right of way, making sure permits are issued correctly and things like that, and the proper insurance.
Yeah, I was gonna say the fencing, I mean, there's a lot of construction around me and I never
There's
see
still
it.
fencing, I
So,
understand. And that's one of the hard things, I don't wanna, but it's one of the hard things. I usually would drive around and just check things, I mean, that's what my job is, to supervise that. I just haven't had time.
yeah.
And the guys have really been busy, so. But yes, we're trying to get it,
No, I've seen them out trying to get on top of those guys.
so.
I know it's a heavy bill.
But we can do it, we've done it before.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Pat. All right, next we will move on. If there's no more reports, we'll move on to executive session and entertain a motion for that.
I move the city council recess into executive session for 15 minutes to receive advice of council regarding ongoing and potential litigation pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception of KSA 75-4319B2 of the Kansas Open Meeting Act. The open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 9 p.m.
May I respectfully request that we have a 5-minute break for nature in between the start, prior to the start of the,
Amending that to adding a 5-minute in the front of that. Resuming back in city council chambers at 9:05. No formal action is anticipated following the session. Persons to be in attendance are the following: F. Charles Dunley, City Attorney; Patrick Burton, Interim City Administrator.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. See you guys here shortly. Oh, he got it.
I have to watch out for that. I'm not even tall.
Do what? Yeah.
That's just for an extension, but we don't.
Yeah, no, I don't think we. All right, let the record reflect the governing body reconvened in the open meeting at 9:05 PM. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The decision was limited to the subject stated. Whoa, got an echo here. All right, with that, there's no further anything. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. Have a great night, everybody.
You too.
What are we supposed to do with the rest of our night?
No kidding, what is this?